The Cincinnati Bengals were the surprise team of 2021. They went from a top 5 pick to taking the AFC North crown for the first time since 2015 and put together an improbable run to Super Bowl 56, along the way beating the 5-seeded Raiders at home, the top-seeded Titans, and the number 2-seeded Chiefs on the road, before coming just short of defeating the Rams in their home stadium in the big game. Some people called them a flawed team because the offensive line gave up a league-high 55 sacks during the regular season and 19 additional ones during the 4 postseason contests. However, Joe Burrow, combined with his explosive group of skill position players and a well-coordinated defense, allowed them to overcome that, although it ultimately kept them from winning it all, as it literally came down to the final play of Super Bowl 56, where Jamar Chase had Jalen Ramsey beat for a game-winning touchdown, but the offensive line couldn't hold up. Aaron Donald made the big play, and the Rams won the home Super Bowl. Cincinnati made this the main priority of the offseason. They released center Trey Hopkins, who you can argue was the second best lineman in 2021, let the starting left guard and right tackle walk in free agency, while the starter at right guard has now been demoted to third string. So along with the 11th overall pick Jonah Williams from 2019 at left tackle, they signed Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, and Lyle Collins for a combined annual average value of just under $22 million, plus they drafted North Dakota State's Cordell Volson in the 4th round, who I and many others regard as a pro-ready prospect, particularly in the run game. However, a lot of Cincy's issues trying to protect Joe Burrow in 2021 were due to the way they structured the pass protections. Those were largely based on 5-man gap protections, meaning no extra bodies along with the offensive line, because head coach Zach Taylor previously worked under Sean McVay in Los Angeles, where they've been at the top of the league in their usage of 11 personnel, meaning 1 back and tight end along with the 3 receivers, and Burrow was most successful himself at LSU during his Heisman and national championship run, when they spread the field with 5 guys out in the pattern and created a clear picture for him. Now, while we did see a couple of little wrinkles down the stretch, relying so heavily on just one style of protection makes it easier for defenses to attack it, and you have to basically be perfect in your communication and execution. Here's just one quick example of what happened when they didn't have the solution for what a defense was throwing at them last season. This plays from week 8 when they were down by 3 to the Jets, who they ultimately lost to. It's 3rd and long, and while the Bengals did have the back and tight end split to either side of Burrow here, this ends up being a 5-man protection. The defense is overloading the offensive right side and have the inside linebacker mucked up in the opposite B gap. They are running a 3-man game on that right side, where they slant the 2 outside guys hard inside by 1 gap and loop the 2 eye technique, Sheldon Rankins in this case, all the way to the outside. There's a couple of ways to handle this. Either you occupy the back on the left, with the running back stepping up that way, or making him the hot read in case of a blitz, because it is 4th down territory anyway in this case, whilst the left tackle is big on big with his defensive end, and you slide the other 4 linemen away from it. Or if you really want to go with a 5-man pattern, you can at least have the big on big on the left side and slide the other 3 linemen away from it. What you can't do, and this is actually going to happen on this play, is stay manned up on the overloaded side and not communicate passing this off, because now Rankins can wrap around unblocked and take down the quarterback for a big sack. Now let's look at a few plays from Cincy's first 2 games of this season, week 1 hosting the Steelers. This is a similar defensive look to the Jets that I just talked about, where now the Steelers are in a 6-man surface, where the Bengals have their tight end in line, and the other linebacker, Robert Spillane, mucked up into that strong side C gap. He ultimately carries the tight end here, and Pittsburgh's running an inside twist, with Miles Jack on the left side, crashing across the left guard's face, and Cam Hayward coming on a delayed loop to that original B gap. This time the Bengals are actually in 6-man pass protection, but they just don't execute it properly. Center Ted Karras oversteps to the right side here and creates this huge crease between him and the left guard, not allowing them to pass off the linebacker. Plus, as you see, Joe Mixon here apparently is just scanning the rush and decides to help out on the right side with more bodies, allowing Hayward this clear lane to Burrow, which Alex Highsmith ultimately cleans up. And this one I don't really get at all. The Steelers show 4-man front initially, but as Burrow starts his cadence, the boundary safety Terrell Edmonds starts walking down, along with Devin Bush creeping up a little bit here as well, as they blitz Edmonds up the B gap and have Bush work across the center's face, who will be occupied with Cam here. At this point, the Bengals are in 7-man pass pro. However, for some reason Mixon steps up towards the blitzing Edmonds rather than into that one gap that isn't accounted for, before releasing too late for him to be a viable checkdown option. Both end guys at the line get beat to the outside with the speed rush anyway. Mixon gets kind of caught up in traffic here, and Burrow doesn't even have a chance to get to the top of his drop to get the ball out, before getting strip sacked by Highsmith here. But it wasn't all design based, the individual players also struggled. This is Cincinnati's first offensive snap of the game, and the rookie left guard Corliss Wilson gets ragdolled by Cam Hayward here, just pushing to the outside initially to open up that direct path for himself. And on the next snap, you have that pick six by Minkah Fitzpatrick that really set off the day for them, which was a bad route and bad throw by Burrow, to be honest. And because they struggled so much to even pick up pressure schematically, they could never help out the rookie against the walking Hall of Famer, who rides him back pretty effortlessly here, while the reigning defensive player of the year, TJ Watt, pulls down right tackle Lyle Collins on this rip through and basically falls into the sack of Burrow. And I get that these are two of the very best defensive players in football today, but this is the NFL, and a week later they were facing the guy who finished second in the Defensive Player of the Year voting already as a rookie, Micah Parsons. Here Micah easily beats left tackle Jonah Williams on the speed rush, paired with a nice club rip combo, easily getting around the corner and taking down Burrow, who's trying to escape to the right. And Parsons constantly gave his old Dallas teammate Lyle Collins on the right side major trouble, like here when he rode him upfield and then stabbed at the inside shoulder to make the tackle do a full spin move basically to just get a piece of him. Yet with the end of the other side off a T twist, forcing Burrow to run up into the pocket, Micah's able to get back up and takes down the quarterback anyway. What I don't have an understanding for is then leaving that monster on the other side completely unblocked, like they did on this play, where Burrow wasn't able to get the ball out in time properly, and he failed to convert on third down again. Dallas is showing a 7-man pressure, but you know someone has to bail out most likely, because there aren't even enough gaps to rush through. At this point, the Bengals seem to have enough of getting out-schemed or just beat around the outside, and simply go with what seems like another two-way fan protection basically, as they don't have an actual running back on the field, but Hayden Hurst stands in the free A-gap already. Only here, the right tackle Collins either didn't get the call or was already sick of having to block Micah Parsons. As he steps down, Micah gets a clean shot on Burrow, and he's not able to get the ball out to the backside fade route to Chase. And the most tragic part about all of this now is that Burrow doesn't trust his protection anymore, because after getting hit whilst trying to flip it ahead to his check down on second down, now on third and long again, when his offensive line actually does a good job of deciphering through the 6-man surface, which ultimately ends up in just another 4-man rush with TE twists on both sides, with trips by the running back and tight end before releasing into the routes, with a half-line slide on the left side of the O-line. Now Burrow inexplicably decides to spin out to his left side, tries to reverse field over here again, and finally Dorrance Armstrong, who was actually more so the control rusher as the setup man, takes him down for yet another sack. Looking at the wide angle of this, he completely missed Jamar Chase on the backside corner route, where the Cowboys do bail into a cover 2 look here, but in no way can the safety get over in time. As we watch this run, at worst, this should have been like a 30-yard pickup, if not a touchdown, knowing how explosive Jamar Chase is with the ball in his hands. Now that we've watched a lot of the film and talked largely about the issues in protection, I want to get to the other key ingredient as to why the Bengals offense has been struggling, and this is something I discussed on multiple occasions last season, which we can't put all the blame on Zach Taylor, the head coach, but my god, the lack of self-awareness and willingness to break tendencies is pretty alarming. Let's look at some of these numbers. In 2021, the Bengals were 10th in the league in terms of run play percentage on 1st and 10 or more, despite only averaging 4.2 yards per carry on those. That was tied for the 8th lowest mark in the league. Compare that to the 8.7 yards per pass attempt, which was behind only the 49ers and Packers. That's an enormous discrepancy. And Zach Taylor made it even easier for opposing defenses with 3 other tendencies. Out of shotgun, they threw the ball on 83% of plays. Using motion led to an increased run play percentage from 32 to 51%. And finally, most glaringly to me, only the Rams ran more 3 wide receiver sets, as the Bengals had 11 personnel on 77% of snaps. Yet when Cincy did use 12 personnel, their run play percentage skyrocketed from 33 to 71% according to Sharp Football Analysis, whilst averaging less than 4 yards a pop, contributing to a league worst DVOA of minus 32.5 out of non-11 personnel sets. And by the way, they used variations of zone concepts on over 60% of the run plays altogether. Well, they must have learned something from these numbers after their analytics team dove into them this offseason, right? Well, here are the numbers from the first 2 games of 2022. Versus Pittsburgh, overall on first downs, not counting a couple of Joe Burrow scrambles, or the final drive of regulation, since it was a pure pass, do or die kind of situation. On first downs, they called 19 runs versus 17 passes, giving us a 52.8% run rate. And looking at the efficiency on those, on 19 runs, they only accounted for 47 yards, which is good for 2.47 yards per carry, versus their 14 non-sack passes. So those plays where Burrow was actually able to get the ball out, and we've discussed their issues in protection, they racked up 118 yards, which is good for 8.43 yards per attempt. And actually one of those passes was a great interception by Cam Sutton on a seam route that could have easily also led to a 30-yard completion on that one. Furthermore, looking at the usage of multiple tight end sets, altogether they had 4 runs versus 2 passes, giving us a run rate of 66.7%. And one of those pass calls was basically a trips formation with a tight end instead of a wide receiver. So not really something where they kept those guys in line like they usually make it look when they run, and then just throwing out of the look. And then at Dallas, overall on first downs, not counting the kneel down before halftime, they had 16 runs versus 9 passes only, giving us a 64% run rate. Once again, looking at the efficiency on those 16 runs, they were able to get 55 yards, slightly better at 3.44 yards per carry, but they only had those 7 non-sack passes and still were able to get 55 yards on those, good for 7.86 yards per attempt. As far as the usage of sets with multiple tight end goes, they actually started the game with 3 passes, which was very surprising to me, an 11-yard completion to Mixon, and 2 sacks, with one of them being a bust from protection that I already showed earlier, where Hurst was the personal protector. The rest of the game, they only called run plays, 7 of those altogether, giving us a 70% run rate and 100% in the second half. Cincinnati finished dead last in rushing success rate for both weeks so far, at 17 and 20% respectively. Through 2 games, their 13 sacks allowed are 3 more than any other team in the league, and after getting rid of the ball quicker than any other quarterback, Burrow has been holding onto the ball, trying to create plays, but not working through progressions, which he's certainly capable of, but rather just reading one key and then looking down the rush. Just looking at pressure percentage, Joe is actually that average in that, but it's those drive-killing plays that have really been hurting them. I personally predicted the Bengals to be the number 7 seed in the AFC this season, which some people got upset about, but they are still a very talented team with tremendous weapons, a killer quarterback, and a defense that has proven that they can step up in high-leverage moments. But if they want to turn this thing around after the 0-2 start and be a contender in the loaded AFC, they'll need to put together comprehensive protection plans, have the offensive line step up as a unit, and break down tendencies. Will they do it? Week 3 at the Jets could be a great place to start, but as we saw in New York's comeback win over the Browns, they won't give up without a fight. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to follow me on social media. Links in the description below and on the screen right now. Let me know if you think the Bengals can turn this thing around, and if you like these longer formats, all 22 and stats breakdowns, kind of my first one that I really put out here on YouTube, so interested to hear your thoughts. I'll be back next week on my page hellos@footballtalk.com with another written piece, and I'll see if something comes up that makes some sense for another one of these extensive videos. So until then, see you later. Peace!